Here we are. Good morning, Tuesday. MomPower Live. Today we're talking about the value of the family unit. And I just want to, first of all, shout out to all the moms out there who are homeschooling, all the moms out there who are taking their children and living life and nurturing and teaching at the same time. It's something that is not done too much in our society. In our culture nowadays, we've kind of separated that. We say, send your kids out here and do this family thing at home, which there can be some clashing in that. So we're going to talk about today the value of family, how we have a movement in our country right now that is allowing moms to do life and learning in the same platform. So welcome, Stan, to our time this morning. It's great to have you. How are you doing?
I'm doing fantastic. And hey, I want to shout out also to the men that are taking that responsibility on as well, because I know there are single dads out there,
Yeah.
and they are, or even dads that are staying home
Yeah.
and nurturing their children in a different way, and they have taken that role on, and the investment of their children is priceless. So I just want to shout out to the guys as well, because I know I would listen to podcasts or I would listen to talks, and I'm like, what about the dad that is doing these things? About a little bit of just some crumbs. So
Yeah.
I'm throwing some breadcrumbs out to the brothers.
That's right. That's it. Yeah, that's what my husband always says too. He's like, "Where's the dads? Where are you talking about the dads? They're so instrumental." And that is so true. So, yes, huge shout out to the dads. All right, well, let's get started this morning. I just when I went I got it wasn't my first job, but I had gotten a job. I had just gotten out of college, I guess. And I had taken a job for a short period of time. I think I must have been mid-20s when I took this job. And I went to lunch with a girl one day, and she said to me, "I can't stand my mom." And I was like, "What?" Like, this was the most bizarre conversation to me, because growing up, my mom had always been my best friend. She had always been there. I'd always had her as a best friend. Like, I trusted her more than most of my friends. It was just a great relationship with my mom growing up. And that was kind of modeled in our home, that your mom was your best friend. You went to your dad for advice. So when I heard for the first time in my life that this girl didn't have a good relationship with her mom, I was just astounded that such things happened. Um, I guess I was very, very naive, but I'd never really been around anybody who didn't have a great relationship with their parents. And then I guess as I grew older, I realized this is the case a lot of times. There's a lot of personality conflicts in the home and situations that happen that build up grudges and allow that discontentment or that break in relationship, and how tragic that is. So I just wanted to say that the value and the preciousness of having your family as a support unit is worth $1 million or more, actually, right?
Yeah.
How we trust and build trust in our community, in our family, is super important.
Yeah, and I want to say that experience that you shared about your friend, that is more common than not.
Yeah, it's sad.
It is sad, and what I want to say is that it's hard. It's hard, but it is possible to give what we haven't been given. And I look at my own life, and I'm not the perfect model, but I will say this. I'll preface it with this: I became the dad that I never had.
Yeah.
Through misfortune of divorce early on. And my mom was a foreign woman. She raised us in America. We were all Americans, but she raised us the way that she was raised.
Yeah.
And, when you take a generation that was raised in the 40s and 50s and early 60s, they're on their own. Now you are raising children that are born in the 60s, and now you got this revolution that was taking place.
Yeah.
And then my mom and dad got divorced when I was just a very young child. Like I never remember. There's a couple of images that I have of my dad. So when I had children,
Yeah.
I became the dad that I never had. And I have a great relationship with my dad now, but it's distant. I mean, he lives many miles away. And I talk to clients constantly that they've got this, there's this dynamite that blows up every time they get in the same room. And it's, I want to say that the parent didn't receive that.
Yeah.
And so they only communicated what they were given, and they didn't step outside of that box. I feel very fortunate that I had the opportunity and I took that to step outside of that box and do something different.
Yeah, yeah, I love that because that's so important because it talks about just breaking maybe what had happened instead of allowing that generational break to occur in your family and that to continue on a cycle, you actually stop that. So that is powerful in itself. But let's talk about some of the cultural family. I think just like you were your mom brought the culture into your family. All of us are raised with a cultural identity. America
Mhm.
is the melting pot, and all of us have different family values or things that happen in our family that are instrumental to our shaping and to the way that we're doing family together. So our family, my grandparents were farmers, so they were raised on a farm. We did a lot of community work, so very community oriented. So a lot of farming, a lot of community work. But we were raised to be even though sometimes there weren't members of our family that were particularly close in nature, we were still all together as
Mhm.
a family. We still all together unite. And I have to say, some of the best times of our family is when we gather at family holidays because uh, I say a family who laughs together stays together. Like
Yeah.
we tell the funniest stories, and that's probably the highlight of some of our family gatherings is those funny stories. So just being able to incorporate things that even though times are hard, because I'm telling you, every family goes through rough times,
Right.
right? Being able to look at those objectively, take a step back, and building in the strength of being together and then just laughing about it after it's over can be the best medicine sometimes. What are some of those things that you've done to really build that atmosphere of family?
Well, I want to say that my son is definitely the jokester. So he would laugh beyond, the normal capacity. But that's what I love about him. And um, my daughter was just lighthearted. She always, it was like she knew where the borderline was, and she never crossed it as a child.
Yeah,
And as as the children grow older and they create their own identity and they adopt identities and adopt cultures, one of the things that I did not have growing up was we didn't do a lot of family reunions. When I was married, they had family reunions, but my family was fairly small and separated. And I mean, we were just different parts of the country. But I think that those things, as our children are growing up, as we instill the value of community and knowing that the family structure
yeah,
is really a place. Now, not everybody listening to this had that growing up, and this
right,
could be a pain point. And so I want to be sensitive to that and say
right,
that whatever you didn't have and you
yeah,
wanted, you have the opportunity to create it.
yeah,
And it just begins with just one small thing. And having that, we made ice cream, okay, and it took forever to make ice cream,
yeah,
and we did sledding, and we did canoeing, we did rope swings and just crazy stuff,
Right.
and creating an event. And you know, it's taking our creativity
Yeah.
and transforming a room into a fort. You
Yeah.
know, how many parents do that? A lot. You know,
Right.
they set the sheet up over the couch,
Yeah.
and it's creating those elements. And then we get together, and when we were older, we would tell my mom some of the stuff that she did, and she's like, I never did that. I never did that. And we're just laughing because she did, right? And it's the ability to laugh at yourself.
Right.
And also, I hear people say, I find myself saying the things that I never said I would say that my mom says.
Those are good ones. Tell us one of those for sure.
Oh my gosh.
No. Yeah, we could go on for an hour with those because
Oh,
that's
definitely.
true. I know. I'm gonna stop this car. That's one of them.
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
remember my dad saying that so many times, and then as I got older, I was like, I'm gonna stop this car.
Yeah. See, I have to say that as my kids got older, because seatbelts were legal, they were required.
Yeah.
When I was growing up, if my mom, she didn't need to stop the car, she just tapped the brakes, and I'd come forward, and she'd smack me, and I'd get back in the back seat. So, um, my
Right.
mom was 4'9", but you did not mess with her. So,
Right. Right.
yeah.
Yeah, that's a good one for sure. And I love those moments of just remembering. We might not have appreciated some things at the time, but remembering those now, we value those
Oh, yeah.
things that we endured as children growing up. And also, I really appreciated your point about saying, um, you might have a small family, or this might be a sensitive topic, because it's very true. Some of us might have had family that walked away from us, or
Yeah.
might have had individuals that that aren't even part of the family dynamic anymore. My husband is one of those. There were three boys, and one of the boys just simply walked away and just
Mhm.
never returned. And everyone pines for him still to this day. Like, what happened? My husband was the third, and the second child is the one who walked away. But so there are instances where I just feel things happen, and people make decisions and never return on those decisions. Never, whatever the issue was, they never bring forgiveness, and there's a cut. And so there's always instances where there's some difficult situations in families. But I also want to say that I feel like sometimes bonding with those individuals in church or community events can be similar to acting as brothers and sisters. Like, it's almost adopting. I have a very good friend who's he's a male friend, and I would say that he is like my brother. He's been in our church environment probably for the last 25 years. He's like a son to my parents. And so we invite him to all family events. He's not even related to us, but he's part of our family, so to speak, because his family is very far away. He doesn't really
Mhm.
have anybody else here. So he doesn't really have anybody. So we've kind of adopted him. But there's lots of opportunity for families to build and grow without the blood connections, so to
Yeah.
speak, that are valuable and intrinsic in your daily relationship and value of your unit and functioning.
Yeah. And I have a particular friend that we've been friends for 40 years, and
Yeah.
we became friends by working together and just kind of hanging out. And he's 12 years older than I am. And when his kids were born, I was like, I'd come home and I'd visit with them. And as they grew up, they called me Uncle Stan.
Yeah.
And So he has 4 children, and now there's, I don't know, 4, 5, 6 grandchildren. But I've married 3 of these kids.
Wow.
So
Yeah.
I've done the wedding service for 3 of them.
Yeah.
And to this day, they call me Uncle Stan. And when the one, Justin, was in the 7th grade, 6th or 7th grade, they were at a family reunion, and I'm not there.
Right.
And so I came after the family reunion to their house and hang out, and they're all calling me Uncle Stan, and Justin says to his dad, Jim, he says, is Uncle Stan really our uncle? Because he's darker than the rest of the family, right? So, you know, Jim said, Uncle Stan is more of a brother than my own brother. And
Yeah.
so, yes. And so these kids are not kids anymore. I want to say Brandon is, well, he's 40 years old, almost 40 years old, and he still calls me Uncle Stan.
Yeah.
And all the kids call me Uncle Stan. And, there's that bond that if you don't have it, take the opportunity to create it and
Right.
open yourself up. Who would have known 40 years ago that our relationship would have
Yeah.
transpired into what it has? And it is closer than family.
Yeah.
And I love him just like a brother, and I love these kids like if they were mine.
Yeah.
And that's a unique, special gift that I've been given.
Yeah, absolutely. That's a beautiful story. And it's a true testament to family is not necessarily a blood connection, but it
Yeah.
is a connection that provides such value for who you are as an individual and for your family unit. My friend, he is very good with my parents and helping with my parents, and he is like a son to them, even though not technically a son. And those are valuable relationships. When I say the value of family, I'm talking about those relationships as well. The ones who come along beside you. When Jesus was having his 12 disciples, I am pretty sure, even though they weren't family, they were operating as a family unit,
Right.
operating as a family unit in that they were together, in that they were jesting with each other, in that they were competing with each other. But they were a family unit outside of the family unit. And I think that's a powerful model for us. And I think your story today is just a real testament to that.
Yeah. It's in the family dynamic. One of the things, I have a son and I have a daughter, and they're both different. So
Yeah.
their identities were different. So I'd never expected my son to, be more like his sister, or my daughter to be more like her brother. And it was just to appreciate their identities and their makeup and how they did things different. And
Yeah.
to appreciate that and to have gratitude about how they did things different. One was, tidier than the other one, was,
Yeah.
they were just different, and it was to appreciate their
Yeah.
sensitivity.
Yeah.
I want to say that I had the fortune of, my son was so intuitive to the need of others. So when he was in the 2nd grade, I think, um, there was a family that their house burned,
Yeah.
and he did not have a loose tooth when he went to school, and they were going to take up a donation to help this family.
Yeah.
And he worked that tooth, and he was bleeding till he got that tooth out,
Wow.
and he got it out, and he's like, I want to put this under the pillow so that I can give that money to that family. I mean,
Wow.
these are the values that we instilled that we did not know. So what I want to say to, especially moms that are around their children constantly, your
Right.
work environment never changes.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
you can't separate that time. You don't have that time, that luxury of time to go, okay, the kids are at school, I can breathe.
Yeah.
You
Right.
don't have that separation. You have that, you get up, you're making the lunches, you're making the studies, the
Yeah.
agenda, you're making sure that they're getting it done. Now then, the end of the day, you got a what they call a half an hour break, and then you're preparing meals.
Yeah.
And you do that over and over, and your environment, you never leave your environment. So
Yeah.
it's you can't separate. So I want to encourage those that can't separate their work environment from their home environment, from their pleasure environment, because it's a nonstop.
Yeah.
So I want to say definitely what you're instilling, make sure that you are also recharging your battery just like you would your phone.
Yeah.
Get some recharge and hire somebody to come in just for a
Yeah.
half, a half a day. And
Mhm.
they can be in your environment and go and do something by yourself. That's something that I would definitely encourage. And that builds a family structure because you're
Right.
creating that identity.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. Having the mom well, happy, and whole is key to having the family happy and whole. You've heard happy wife, happy life for a marriage. That's a true statement.
Yeah.
So happy mom, happy family. That's a true statement too. And sometimes moms just do need a minute to themselves. And I hear that as one of the biggest asks of moms
Mhm.
is, can I have a few minutes to myself? Of dads. And you know what? Dads nowadays are phenomenal with stepping up to the plate and giving moms time. I see so many dads today coming in, taking care of the children. And I've seen several social media posts on your where one husband's doing it, one husband's not doing it, and just how grateful and blessed that so many families are, that dads are now stepping in, realizing that there's a lot of work to be done. And he's an integral part of that. And that is like so helpful when the total burden of everything doesn't just fall on the mom.
Yeah.
I totally love that. And if you can't even afford that 4 hours or whatever to take a break, find another way, barter, um,
Yeah.
whatever you need to do to just step away to have some time for yourself, because just recollecting yourself every now and then is super valuable for moms, for just your mental well-being. Because guess what? One day, all of those kids are going to grow up and they're going to leave. They're going to find their own way. I know we talked about this, but every child does find their own way. They do
Mhm.
find how they're going to be successful. They do learn to navigate life without you. And so, in order to prevent that day of reckoning, make sure that you still have your self identity, that you still know who you are and what you've been given purpose to do beyond what you're doing today.
Right. One of the things that I want to say is that as I work with clients as well, and we're working through this, would you want to be you? If you could, if you could choose that, would you really want to be who you are? And if you're not, that is being communicated to those that are around you.
Yeah.
And so I think this is where some of the disconnect happens, because as we are around an environment or around people and we go, I wouldn't want to be like them.
Yeah.
And so we do everything that we can to not be like them.
Right.
And um uh unfortunately, as I grew up, my mom was an alcoholic, and
Mhm.
I never wanted to have an alcohol drink. And I
Yeah.
did not drink alcohol until after I was 22 years old, 21 years old.
Yeah.
I think I was about 22. I went skiing and I met a girl on a mountain. And anyway, so but it's always a girl. Anyway,
Right.
okay. But the idea was that I didn't want to be like that.
Yeah.
And I can't remember the last time. It's probably been 8, 10 years, 9 years ago that I had a drink.
Yeah.
No, actually, I had a margarita with my son about 4 years ago, 3 years ago, but that was the first time probably in a long time. It's just not part of my identity, and so whatever it is that I'm communicating through my actions, through my thoughts, through my perception of my world that I'm creating, those little ones are watching,
Yeah.
and if I'm not happy with that, I've
Yeah.
got to find a place that I can become happy, become content, become invigorated, and say so that my kids go, I want to be just like that,
Yeah.
you
Yeah.
know?
Yeah.
And yeah, that's so vital,
It is. Yeah.
because those little eyes are watching.
Yeah. So true. And not to stray away from that topic, but sometimes moms are just exhausted. So
Yes.
they may be displaying behavior just from lack of rest. And I can remember so many days. So I taught school, but my children were in the private school that I was teaching at. So it was a really great dynamic. But I can remember so many nights being up all night with a sick child, going to school and working, the next day, and then coming home and doing the whole routine. And it's just exhausting. And sometimes you just need rest. I can remember like trying to incorporate rest time into my lifestyle just to maintain, like, lack of rest will send you over the edge
Yes.
sometimes when you don't really mean to go there. It's just our bodies need rest. And some of us more than others. My husband doesn't need quite as much rest as I do, but I need rest. And so making sure that we have those things in our life that are needed for us to function well so that we are displaying those appropriate behaviors.
Yeah, we could have an entire segment on the value of sleep and what it does, not just to our brains, but to our digestive system, to our circadian rhythm, all of these things, our immunity, and that it gets communicated through our verbal expression. And
Yeah.
our verbal expression can be non-audible. So
Yeah.
our verbal expression is the way that we storm across the room or that we dance across the room. There's that verbal expression.
That's right.
It's words without words.
That's right.
And it really comes from the value of sleep. So we could, I mean, that's just something that we could value. And I know that there's a mom out there right now saying, I can't afford to sleep. And I'm going to say, you can't afford not to sleep,
That's right. That's so true. That's
you
right.
know?
Yeah.
And
Find those sleep
yeah,
times. Whether it's the middle of the day, if it's mid morning, whatever it is, like catch those power naps when you can. I mean, I highly
right,
encourage. I have to do it for myself. Even today, I run a full schedule, but when I need a power nap, I can tell. But that short period of rest will always re-energize me and take me through the rest of the day.
right,
Yeah.
right.
I have to say one more thing because I had a child who was, I never heard the term hangry. And that's when you're hungry. And so you're angry. But I had a child who was like that. And it was the funniest thing. We would have to like stop everything, get food immediately because we had a child. I had a child who would get so angry if he didn't have food in his body. And so it was this constant thing. Oh my gosh, he's hangry. Stop. Wherever we're at, we got to get food immediately to stop. So that's another thing. Sometimes just not feeding your body appropriately will cause you to display a lot of behaviors that you shouldn't be displaying. So it was
Yes.
a game. It was a funny game in our house for a long time. So food is necessary, especially for, um, you know, growing boys and making sure that everybody's well balanced and getting what they need.
I'm laughing and I almost uncontrollably because the situation is there's a little girl that's almost 3 and the little girl almost 2. And they'll get their bottles in the morning.
Yeah.
And The younger one, when she is done with her bottle and she wants more, she throws the bottle down and just starts screaming like this is her morning drink. Don't mess with her. Okay. And there's not enough. Okay.
Get me another coffee.
Yeah, that's right. And and it is so comical. But the identities, it's appreciating those identities, and it's just that hangry
Yeah,
kind of, it's just funny.
yeah,
And those are the moments that you look back and you laugh at. And maybe in the moment now, they're not funny, but you know, there was a time when my son, like I wasn't going to let him do something. He said, you know what? I'm just going to move. I'm just going to leave. He was 6 years old. I'm like, okay. He says, I'm going to go get my backpack and I'm going to leave. I'm like, okay. So he got his backpack and he says, I'm leaving. And he grabs the door and he looks out back and he says, okay, I'm leaving. I go, okay, let me know where you're going to be. Do you have any postage stamps that you can send me a postcard? I'm leaving. So he gets out and he's walking down the driveway and he's looking back, waiting for me to
yeah,
come. And we live in a small subdivision.
yeah.
And he got to the end of the road and he's standing there at the corner. And so I started to walk out and I said, hey, I just got to ask you a question. Do you have something to drink in your bag? Because you're probably going to get thirsty. So I took him some water and I said, are you sure you want to leave? Well, maybe I'll leave tomorrow. I'm like, okay. Well, then let's go talk about it. And if you decide that you want to, it's allowing them
Yeah,
that freedom.
yeah,
And that's one of those funny moments
yeah.
that is irreplaceable. So yeah. Anyway,
Yeah, there's so many good ones like that it's so funny. And again, that adds to the family strength and
yeah,
bonding, our strengths and our weaknesses. Really creates the family dynamic of you know uh being able to work together, to bond together through the good and the bad. That truly is, uh, you know, the definition of family and sticking together. Now, I have to say, my husband's Italian. That Italian heritage, they are tough. Like they can say things to each other I would never say to anybody, and then it's like they are like kissing brothers' necks. Like there are things that like Italians, I love their family culture because
uh-huh,
they are so extremely tough. They can hand it out, but then like no matter how it is handed out, they are like stronger than ever. So however your family culture works, I do love the differences that I see in the cultural values and the strength of family in that. So yeah, it's a beautiful thing for sure.
yeah. And one of the things that I want to say also, because I know that there are homeschool moms that are single, that are out there that are
Yeah,
single, and I
yeah,
just want to encourage them as well. Is that find yourself a network. I'll create a network. If you can't find one, create one,
yeah,
and create a small environment where you have that support and that ability to share ideas and topics and creative experiences that
yeah,
you can communicate to your children, and that you can also be recharged and renewed again, and know that the work that you're doing does not go unnoticed.
yeah,
And it may not seem like it today, but when those kids grow up, there's a verse in the Bible that says that if you train a child in the way that he should go while he is young, and it can be a she or a he, okay, so
yeah,
but when he's older he will return.
yeah,
And just know that every path started in an open field. There was no path.
yeah,
And it was just through that traveling over and over that same path that became a walkway, and then it became a roadway, and it became a highway.
Yeah.
And know that the investment that you're making in your children and the values that you're bringing and the traditions that you're setting, they may not adopt all of them,
Yeah.
but give as though you wanted to receive it. And that's the only last thought that I have that I could share.
Yeah, that's really good. And I do want to say, so last night I was watching the Republican National Convention for a short while, and there were several senators, members of the House, who got on the stage and said, I was raised by a single mom. And
Yeah.
I'm standing on this stage because she taught me to work hard, to never give up, to be resilient, and she always stood behind me. So never ever underestimate the power of a single mom
Yeah.
raising children. There's such power in that. And it was huge to see testimony after testimony of, I'm on this stage and I was raised by a single mom and we didn't have a lot. They weren't wealthy. We were struggling.
Yeah.
I think one of them even said I was on government assistance. So
Mhm.
know that regardless of the place that you're in, that you have a defined destiny right now to walk in what you're walking in. And again, find the ones that will come around you and support you in this place where you're at. So good. Yeah,
Yeah.
awesome. Well, that was a great conversation today. I love these thoughts. I hope it was encouraging to you. Even if you're watching this not live, if you liked it, please subscribe, follow. We look forward to just kind of having these conversations to encourage you, to motivate you in your daily walk, to move forward in wherever God has called you to for this particular moment. All right.
Exactly.
Yeah,
Yeah.
go ahead. Any last thoughts? Any last words from
Yeah,
you?
the only thing that I want to say, and I'll say this probably at the end of each of our podcasts and all the podcasts that I do, is that don't do life by yourself.
Yeah.
The struggle is real, but having those that can show you the path that's quicker, more effective, a different perspective, reach out and ask for help. That's where strength comes in, when we have the ability to ask for help from other people, and a different perspective can change everything.
Yeah,
So
absolutely. All right. Have a wonderful week, and we will see you next time on Mom Power. Take